Hey guys, Aaron here. I'm sharing that right now I'm taking on new clients for my Metabolic Performance Protocol coaching program. This is 22 weeks of elite nutrition coaching, hypertrophy focused training, and context specific education paired to the program that we apply directly to your lifestyle. If you're a male, sorry ladies, who wants the physique that reflects how hard you work in the gym and likes understanding how things work under the hood, then this is for you. I'm giving you the education you need to stand on your own 2 feet when it comes to periodizing your nutrition. You can expect to walk away with more muscle mass, better sleep, improved digestion, less body fat, and absolute confidence in knowing exactly what to do with your nutrition. The start date is August 2nd. Applications close this Friday, July 30th. This is the final time I'm accepting new clients until next year. You can submit your application on my website, which is in the show notes. Now, let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of Eat, Train, Prosper. Today, Bryan and myself are going to give a little bit of life updates of what we have going on. I'm going to recap my 30 days without caffeine experiment, and then we're going to get into the details of our current meal feeding frequency and what our meal composition structure looks like with each of those, as we are in myself kind of in the end of my diet, and then Bryan, I think, is still maybe in the thick of it a little bit more. So we're going to talk about that and then answer a couple questions we have as well. Before we get into these, Bryan, what's the latest?
Not a whole lot going on here. I am on day one of my active recovery week outside of the gym. So we can talk a little bit more about that as we get going, because I think that ties into the diet stuff and training stuff and basically everything else in life. But I'm excited about it, and I am mostly excited about hearing about your 30-day of no caffeine recap. So let's hear what's going on, dude.
Before I get into that, I'll provide one little quick life update that I find is comical. So we're here, by we, my girlfriend and I, living with air quotes here, long vacationing, I guess, in Utah, and someone backed into our car at a stoplight when I was heading to the gym on last Wednesday, and it was a big truck. And now I'm like going through the rounds with insurance, and we find out it's probably going to be totaled. And I'm like, damn it, because we're not going to be here long. And we bought the car when we were in Texas, and we're like, well, just get a car for a couple months. And it was super, I felt kind of strange. Like, I'm like, I feel like I have to go lie to the DMV about being this like Texas resident to buy this car, because I'm not, and I don't plan on it. And now we're like, okay, finally we got it done. Like, no one, outed us. And now I'm gonna have to do it again here in Utah. And I'm like, we just bought this like 3 months ago. In April. So yeah, like 3 months ago. And now we're gonna have to probably go do it all over again. And used car prices right now are like absolutely insane because of like the weird economy stuff going on. And then it took us like almost 3 days to get a rental because there's this like nationwide rental car shortage, because apparently the companies had to like sell off their fleets to stay afloat during COVID and all this stuff. And I'm just like, why is this happening right now? So, and then like always, they were supposed to tell me on Friday. I never got a call. They were supposed to tell me on Monday. I never got a call. So after the podcast, once it reaches like noon, I'm going to call them and be like, what is going on? Like, can I get some sort of information here so I know what I need to do and how quickly I need to go find and purchase another car? So just a wild kind of life update there. But
Oh man, that's too bad. I at least the car got you to Utah, so you got the cool road trip out of it.
yeah.
And you should get some money or a new car out of this deal, right?
And well, one thing we did find with the old car, the air conditioning like works until it's like 100 degrees, and then the air conditioning doesn't work. And then,
No.
ironically enough, it is always 100 degrees here in Utah. Like every
Right.
single day, the forecast is like 101, 103, 99. I think tomorrow or something like that's supposed to be like 106. So, just rolling around with the windows down, dealing with it.
There you go, man.
But yeah, it's just interesting, and I'm just trying to make the best of it. But I'm hoping that it's not a big pain in the ass to go get another vehicle registered and stuff. It's just like a time sink that I don't want to deal with.
Right.
Is really what it
Right.
is.
You hate when stuff like that comes up, like bills you have to deal with, or like wrong bills or something like that, and you spend like an hour on the phone with people.
Yeah. So it's
Awful.
kind of one of those situations. But on a more positive note, I finished my 30 days without caffeine challenge. So what it
Yes.
started with was a 30 days without coffee, and what I really meant by that was like, by way of less caffeine, and I was going to be like, oh, in the first couple of days I was having like, a couple green teas, which are, approximately like 1/3 of the caffeine content of like, your traditional coffee. And then as I kind of started thinking about it and stuff, I'm like, well, maybe I just want to do like a no caffeine thing. Cause I wouldn't say called me out, but they're like, well, why don't you just do decaf? And then foolishly, I didn't even think of that. So I was like, well, I'm already in the thick of it, so I might as well keep going. So after like 3 days into it, I decided I'm going to go, no caffeine. So I pulled out the green teas and stuff. And then I ended up doing like, not the full 30 without coffee. I added back decaf on like day 27 or 28 because it was like the 4th of July and we were at the lake and I just like having a coffee there in the morning, on the lake. So I was like, I'll just do a decaf, there. And then I wrapped it up on Sunday. We went on a big hike. I got a coffee on the way out. Fortunately, or unfortunately, it wasn't very good, which kind of like was like a little bit of a downer on the whole experience, right?
Yeah.
But the first couple days were really, really rough. And I was really surprised because like you think that you don't depend on something like that. We have this kind of strange, and by we, I mean maybe like a societal standpoint, this strange kind of perspective on addiction. And, it's kind of like looked down upon a little bit. But then at the end of the day, like the majority of us, like we have an addiction to caffeine. And then when you take that away, like you go through withdrawal symptoms, and my energy levels were crazy low those first few days. Like the first 4 days were rough, like right around the like noon to 2 p.m. If I didn't go to the gym, like I would just get this like overwhelming weight of like, bro, we need to take a fucking nap. And I'm not a napper. And like both days that I didn't go to the gym in that first couple day period, I had to go upstairs and lay on the couch for like 30 minutes. And the one day, Jenny had to come over and wake me up because my alarm that I had set like a 20-minute alarm on my phone. It was just a foot in front of me, just repeating, going off and going off. And she was like, you're just sleeping through it. And like, that's very uncharacteristic of me. Like I have to put my phone away, like on the floor in the room, because if it's too close to the bed, like a text message notification or an email notification will wake me up in the middle of the night. And that's on a carpet. So I'm like not a deep sleeper, but it was just crushed me. And then as I, kind of went through, and immediately my sleep was really, really nice. So that was awesome. And then that kind of faded back into its baseline, and I needed to put a little bit more effort there, be really, conscious of my blue light and blue blockers and stuff at night. But then as it kind of went through, and then I, also picked up this audiobook by Michael Pollan called Caffeine, which is a very cool audiobook that I would recommend. It's pretty short, maybe about like 3 hours in total. And he talks about the history, which is pretty cool to learn, but also there's a bunch of like conversations with like sleep researchers and these different people. And it's one of those things that like people pull their consumption back like by a lot. It was kind of an eye-opening thing for me. And what I ultimately landed on and what I'm sharing now is, for me, like I love the flavor, the taste of like a black coffee. But I don't want to be reliant on caffeine just to get back to baseline every single day to be a human. And that is where so much of us have found ourselves, right? It doesn't like it wouldn't work for me anymore. Like if I were like, oh man, I need some energy, like I'm gonna have this coffee, like I wouldn't get like a net positive, but if I didn't have it, I would have a net negative. So it would just like create that baseline again. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact of like needing something just to create a baseline. I equate it to the people who like can't work out without their pre-workout, or they have like a shit workout. Like at that point, it is not a tool anymore. It is a crutch type of thing. And that's exactly how I felt with the caffeine. So moving forward, what I've decided upon is I love to have that, cup of, hot coffee in the morning. I'm just going to drink decaf. I'm going to experiment with different ones. I prefer a dark roast to, a medium or a light. So I'm using that, just finding what I like. I'll brew it, and then I'll maybe take some like nootropics, like some lion's mane or something like that, and alpha GPC to help with like that concentration and focus in the morning. And then just be, a habitual decaf drinker. I still get the hot drink that I like and enjoy. I have one right here, but I don't get that like addiction or the feeling of that. It's not. It's like an inversion of control type of thing. And that's kind of from a psychological standpoint what I didn't like. So, and then kind of the cherry on top hopefully, is then times when I do need it, like let's say, we have like a travel day where I only sleep 4 hours because we have to take some red eye or something like that. I can get that coffee, that caffeinated one, and then it actually does something for me, which is the entire goal of having the coffee in the first place. So that's what I landed on. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that's awesome. I think that being able, like the way that you phrased it, where you basically like it stopped having an effect, like it was like a null effect essentially. So you had to drink the coffee. It was like a dependency where you have to drink the coffee or else you don't feel like yourself. And then at that point, it's not really a positive in your life. It's like an addiction. Exactly. So the way that now you use it is almost like the way you would go out and like party if you did it once a week versus somebody that's like an alcoholic and has to drink every day. And I think that you get a lot more enjoyment out of like partying once a week than you would feeling like obligated because you're dependent upon this substance to feel okay for the day.
You kind of hit the nail on the head of summarizing that perfectly for me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting with the caffeine and stimulants in general because when we were doing CrossFit stuff and I was, doing the gym and CrossFit and overtrained plus overstimulated all the time, I really did kind of depend on like Adderall and caffeine and like I was doing all the things to like keep me in this overtrained state and still functioning okay. And since changing to more of like this physique focused, style a number of years ago, my caffeine consumption has gone way down. I haven't had any other stimulants other than caffeine. And the last couple years, I've even gotten to a point where I just have a morning 200 milligram like caffeine pill or whatever, and I don't have caffeine the rest of the day. And like you kind of alluded to, when you work out, it kind of gives you that energy and focus that maybe the caffeine was providing you. So I'll take like my caffeine or coffee or whatever it is in the morning at 6 a.m. and then by 9 a.m. I work out, and that just kind of pushes me through the rest of the day and gives me that energy that I need. So that's been like a really cool balance for me, and obviously like no stimulative pre-workouts or anything like that.
Yeah, it's the stim pre-workout is like, I mean, not to change the subject too much, but that's like one of the first things I'll generally pull with a lot of my clients, unless they're working out, like first thing in the morning and then they're not having coffee or whatever when they go to work. But I kind of very strongly encourage everyone to get on like a stim free, just because you don't need 300 milligrams of caffeine at 4 p.m., 7 p.m. when you're going to work out. Like you're going to we will fight an uphill battle with everything else specifically because of that decision.
Yeah, I think mine has alpha GPC and citrulline in it.
Like citrulline malate, what's the other one? Beta alanine, perhaps.
Yeah, so I use the one from Flex Brands, which is Steve's company, the co-owner of Paragon.
Yeah, okay.
And it's really good. It's like blue raspberry. It's really bomb.
Cool.
Sweet, but yeah, that's good, dude. I'm glad that now you have your natural energy back and you don't need to nap anymore in the middle of the day too.
Yeah, that was like really eye-opening. I was like, I objectively feel like a pile of crap.
Right.
Cool. So I know that you are moving into this active recovery phase week. Do you want to talk about that? And then we'll get into our diets a little bit?
Yeah, totally. So one thing I've always been a big proponent of, that I talk about, on other podcasts and in Facebook forums and stuff, is the importance of just taking a week away from the gym where you're not actually training every like 6 to 12 months. And it had been at least a year for me, I think. I've had a number one of these. So one of the things I talked about on my story the other day was a frequency deload. So I've done a number of these recently, and I actually really like them as a tool. So essentially, if you have like your normal 5 days that you train in like a week, or call it a week, say you extend those 5 days over a week and a half or whatever, then you're essentially just getting 3 or 4 extra days of rest, but you're not actually taking like a deload week. You're just kind of continuing to train as normal. And I really like those because you do feel recovered from them, but I don't think that they're a permanent solution, at least not for me. Like, it's not like I could just do a frequency deload every 2 or 3 months and then never have to actually take like a full deload. So because of these frequency deloads, I didn't actually take a full deload. I just did 2 of these frequency deloads over like a 3-month period. And I just kind of recently in the last week have found myself starting to feel fatigued, the not diet fatigue. Like I'm not having issues with my diet or with food or anything like that. I'm not feeling super hungry. I'm just feeling a little bit less motivated in the gym. And motivation in the gym is, for me personally, one of the main factors that tells me that it's time to deload. And so when I realized that I was kind of feeling this way, I decided that I was going to complete my microcycle. And then I thought about the last time I did an active recovery phase. And that has been, like I said, a really long time ago. I've been doing frequency deloads and then actual deloads, but I never actually get out of the gym and just don't really do anything in there. So I decided it was time, and I'm actually really excited about it. Like, as soon as I made that decision, it almost felt like there was kind of a weight lifted off of me, because the notion of like having to go through another microcycle was kind of like just weighing on me. So I feel great. I'm gonna go out and walk. I'm gonna go biking. I haven't been able to bike in a really long time because I just don't have an hour of time to like get out there and just go explore. So I'm gonna take my bike out instead of working out. I'm gonna go for like some casual bike rides around town, maybe do a trail or something like that, and play basketball maybe one day, something like that. So I'm excited about it, and then I will come back on July 19th. So I guess by the time this episode drops, which is July 20th, I'll be training again. So you guys may not even notice that I took a week out of the gym. But I'm excited because my hip extension machine just shipped today. So it should be here in time for me to begin my new meso. And I don't really think I'm going to change anything. I can actually talk about that more on the next episode. But I really, really, really like the structure that I have in my training right now, with the kind of one muscle group being like a priority in a session, one or two muscle groups, and then kind of filling in the gaps with smaller doses of volume throughout the week. So I really, really like that. I like the order that I have them in and everything. So I'm going to keep everything mostly the same and just bring in the hip extension instead of... I don't know. I think what I might do to start, because I don't want to completely abolish the good morning, is I'll probably do one good morning set and one hip extension set. And then based on whichever one of those I end up preferring, I may end up just doing 2 sets of one of those. But anyways, that is future talk. And yeah, ab training. We totally started training our abs as well, which is cool. I think I'm actually going to continue doing my abs twice a week in my week out of the gym, and I'm just going to go do them on a playground or something. Like while I'm out for a walk, I'm just going to like do some hanging knee raises or something like that, and just do it in nature. Because I did commit to doing abs, so I think that makes sense. And they were sore for 3, kind of almost a little residual soreness, and the 4th day still, from the ab rollouts. How about you? Did you get sore from your ab work?
So the first day I went in to do them, which was like Saturday, I believe, or whenever we messaged, and I couldn't find the ab wheel. I looked everywhere, and I'm 100% certain I had seen one in the gym before, and I could not find it. So I did the like the reverse crunches, like on a bench, with the dumbbell. I went super light, 15 pounds, because I was like, I always do this. I overcommit, and then they're crushed for like a week, and then it like will impact my leg day and stuff because they're so smoked. Yep. So I didn't really get sore from that. Good. But it's different, like that. The ab wheel. That's the whole reason I like it. It's a very demanding, movement. So I'm going to look, I guess, either today or tomorrow when I go to the gym. And if I can't find it, I'm just going to buy one. They're like $10 on Amazon. I'll buy it and leave it at the gym when I leave. I don't care about that at all. I just want to be able to do it because it's like realistically one of the few ab movements that I like don't despise doing. And I feel that it's like very effective, for me personally. So that is going, I'm down. I'm sticking to it, going through with it. So I have to find that ab wheel for sure.
Well, the reason I think the ab wheel gets you so sore is because it's a lengthened overload movement, right? So we take it back to the overload range, like very much like when I was doing them and I would approach failure. It was that very, very bottom stretch position where it's like, if I can get out of this stretch position, the rest of the rep is pretty easy. But getting out of the stretch is the real challenge. So, Yeah, that's a hell of an overload when that's the position that you're stuck in versus like in a crunch. It's a shortened position overload.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the top of the movement where it's going to be hardest and significantly less damage. So I think it's I think the weighted reverse crunch that we're doing, I think that's actually a lengthened overload movement too. But I think that's okay because we're only doing 2 sets a session. So I think that it's probably good that we're choosing damaging movements. Whereas if we were gonna commit to like 6 or 7 sets a session, we would probably want to opt more for like short range overload movements.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Word up. Well, let's talk about our diet. Are we ready for that?
Yeah,
You
let's get
wanna
into the diet stuff.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about kind of like a normal day of eating for us, like timing and meal, what it's made of. So
Yeah.
composition. So yeah, go ahead, go for it. Tell us what's going on. How do you eat?
So I guess I'll before I get into that specific, just kind of where I'm at. I'm on the very tail end of my diet. I've decided, for better or for worse, it's going to be over like pretty much August 1st. I don't really see a benefit in me getting any leaner at this point, really. And some of that is I just one I'm reaching a number on the scale I kind of do not like to see. I don't really have any plans of seeing 180s, 189 and anything on the scale ever again, and I'm getting pretty close to that. So that is a little bit of just like a bigorexia type thing. I don't have any plans of getting on stage anytime soon or anything like that. So I just don't see a benefit of going like, I'm at 10% body fat. I have abs. Sorry, I have abs. I have like some veins coming through in my abs. Like there's no benefit to me getting any leaner in my personal opinion right now. So, and plus I love the phase of transitioning out of a diet. When you're like adding the carbohydrate back in, you subjectively feel so much better. Your training sessions are better. You have more energy. And then on like top of that, your muscle glycogen stores are filling out and you look better on top of it. So it's like across the board is a net positive with everything. Like you're eating more, you have more energy levels, your sex drive starts to return, you look better. It's like it's literally fucking awesome. So I want that to happen. So it's another aspect there. And I have like just in the past couple days have started to get that like a little bit of diet fatigue. And how I've noticed it in two ways. I generally recover very, very well from training. It's unless I ramp something up, way too quickly or something like that, I'm generally recovered in like 48 hours. Rarely do I have to modify my, planned intervals of training because I'm like overly sore, and I can just tell it's lingering a little bit more. And then I can just feel a little bit of like a subjective like pressure on myself, which is just like means like I have just a little bit less energy. My legs are like a little bit heavier. I'm not as interested in like going out on a big hike or something like that. It's just like a little bit disinterested, and I can tell that that's setting in. So I mean that's how I know it's kind of for me. Like I said, for my goals, that's where I'm pretty much at. And then getting into kind of how I structure it. I like to do, I have found what works best for me is 5 meals per day. Those are a combination of different meals. And then that basically what it looks like is I have like a breakfast. I will have a pre-workout meal. I'm still doing an intra-workout. That's a change that I have taken with this particular diet phase is instead of having like carbs with dinner or something like that, I've opted to keep my carbohydrate in my intra-workout. So that is like technically a sixth meal, although it's not really a meal, it's just a drink. And then I will have a post-workout, and then I will have basically like lunch because I called the first one pre-workout, and then I have dinner. So how I have them is my 3 highest carbohydrate meals are going to be my intra-workout, my post-workout, and my pre-workout. So stacking my carbohydrate mostly around those. And then recently, as of my last diet update, where my coaches removed some more carbohydrate, I am now doing no starches with my lunch or dinner. And just to be clear, I'm calling it lunch and dinner, but from a time standpoint, that lunch is generally around 4 p.m., 5 p.m., and then that dinner is anywhere from like 7 to 9 or 9:30 in the case of last night, because I got I wasn't paying attention and working. So it's not like I'm having lunch at noon and no carbs or anything like that. And then breakfast will have carbohydrate. So that is kind of my structure. And then do you want to talk about your structure? And then maybe we'll, cover like specific foods that we're doing.
Yeah, I think mine are tied a little bit together because essentially I only have liquid food up until about like noon or 1 usually. And then I have 2 meals and a snack. So I guess that's my structure. The composition is probably a little bit more important as far as the details of that structure go.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about the details then. I'll start. So
Okay.
my breakfast is I eat the same thing basically every single day with breakfast. I will modify some things like slightly, but I love it. It's like it's literally the highlight of my day, and I look forward to it so much. Which sounds kind of corny, I suppose, but I'm here for it. So I always do a lot of spinach, pretty much as not as much as I can, but at least 75 grams of spinach. And then I'll usually do 2 eggs, and I aim to split my protein throughout those 5 meals approximately evenly. So depending on how much I need with that, my egg whites that I then supplement those 2 eggs with will scale up and down. So I'm aiming around like 50 to 55, 50 to 60, I should say, grams of protein with each of those meals. And then that, would correspond how much egg whites I do, liquid egg whites in grams. And then I will do approximately like half a avocado, which is going to be approximately like 50 to 70 grams, depending on the size of it. And then a little bit of fruit, generally a berry, strawberries right now, just because I don't have that much carbohydrate I can eat, in that meal. And you get the most volume out of, strawberries as opposed to, pretty much all other types of fruits. But that might be blueberries sometimes too. And then I will, for my starchy carbohydrate with breakfast, will be Ezekiel bread. So I've recently converted to try and remove as much unnecessary like gluten and stuff from my diet, just to kind of hedge my bet. My digestion's never been really, really fantastic. And just the more stuff I pay attention to with the increasing incidence of like autoimmunity and stuff, I'm just kind of playing it safe. I enjoy it just as much as bread that has gluten in it, so it seemed like a no-brainer for me. Right now, that's only one slice, which is approximately 40 grams. But, in times where I have much more carbohydrate, that'll go up to like 3 slices or something like that, and then more fruit. That first meal, or my pre-workout meal, which is about an hour before training, will be some whey isolate, cream of rice, and blueberries. I really, really like the cream of rice. It digests super, super easily. So that is something that for most people, I probably wouldn't recommend keeping in this late into the diet because you don't get to eat that much of it. But my hunger's been surprisingly really low. So I'm like, if it's not broken, don't fix it type of thing. And I've just left that in. And then I will put right now about 5 grams of cacao nibs on that just to get a little bit of extra quality fats and diversify my fat intake a little bit there. So I will do that. The intra workout's pretty much just Gatorade powder. Pretty self-explanatory there. The post-workout is very similar to the pre-workout. It's going to be some whey isolate. And then what I will do is go with oats for this one. And then like right now it's about only half a banana. So about 45 grams of banana, just because I just don't have that much carbohydrate. But generally when I'm not dieting, that will be, a full banana and a lot more oats than I'm doing now. And those are pretty much my 3, technically 4 if you include that intra workout of my carbohydrate meal. So I'm pretty much done eating starchy carbohydrate in any meaningful degree by 2 to 3 p.m. in the day after I'm done training. And then that leaves me.
How many have you had at that point?
Right now 180. So that my high day is 180 of grams of carbohydrate. And then my kind of lunch and dinner. Right now I've just been doing stir fry because it's really, really simple. I enjoy the shit out of it, and it gets me a lot of vegetable intake. So then I will do, for the lunch and the dinner are pretty much identical, except I will swap a protein source. So for example, yesterday for the lunch, I did chicken breast. And then for dinner, I did a top sirloin that I kind of like had previously cooked, and then I'll like slice it thinly And then I have a mixed vegetables that I've been doing. So this week I have Brussels sprouts, I have red bell peppers, yellow bell peppers, green bell peppers, white onion, broccoli, cauliflower, carrot, and snap peas, and maybe one that I can't think of, but those are like the 7 vegetables that I just, chopped up and put it together in a big container. And then I will do, approximately 200 to 225 grams of those raw vegetables with that stir fry. I'll put them in the pan, cook them up with a little bit of avocado oil spray. And then I will use 1 tablespoon which is approximately 15 grams of like a stir fry sauce. So I have found if you really go to the grocery store and like compare them, there's really aggressively macro friendly sauces, especially in the low quantity. So like the Kevin's Paleo Foods, I think it's called, makes a teriyaki one that's only 2 grams of carbohydrate per serving. So 2 grams, and then I'll use like this spicy sauce in the evening that is 4 grams, and I'll make sure I save approximately 5 to 6 grams to get me through that. And that's my lunch and dinner, and those are big volumes of food. The amount of chicken and steak or pork like I did last week is anywhere from like 175 to like 225 grams. So that, it keeps me satiated. The only time I am truly hungry is when I wake up, because I've been fasting for 10 hours or whatever, and then if I end up working too long and push my training session back and go too long between like that second meal and the third meal. And that's just from timing standpoint. But that is what the majority of my, eating looks like at this point.
Are you over body weight in protein grams a day?
Oh yeah.
That's what I thought. Because if you're only eating like 180 or 200 grams of carbs on your high day, then if you're not eating like 250 grams of protein or something like that, your just total caloric consumption is low, because I know that you're not like a huge high fat guy or anything.
No, fats are low. Well, low for me, which is 55.
That's really low. Yeah. So if you have 800 calories from carbs, and then you have 500 calories from fat, so you're at 1,300 calories, and then you basically have the rest of them to make up from protein. So if it's like 250, it's like 1,000 calories from protein. That's 2,300 calories. Is that about right? My
protein is higher than that right now. It's 285.
Okay, so you're at like 2,400 calories more or less.
And that's
with a lot of protein.
Yeah, I prefer a higher protein intake. It's just like what we know from those overfeeding studies. You're never going to store it as body fat. At the very worst case, your body will convert it to a carbohydrate through gluconeogenesis, which you're essentially burning calories by cleaving that in that process anyway. So at the very worst, it becomes an expensive carbohydrate. It's just very safe in my opinion.
For sure, yeah. It's interesting to see that because I actually take the opposite approach. Like my fats are similar to yours, like 60 or 65. But I'm like probably 200 grams of protein a day and 285 to 300 on the carbs. So it's like literally the inverse of what you're doing with the protein and carbs. And I think that I think I prefer that, I guess, for like to provide more glycogen and fuel and whatever. And I think I feel better that way, but I guess I've never really tried jacking the protein up and keeping the carbs lower. So that might be an experiment for me at some point.
Mine are generally not this high when I'm dieting, yes, but then as carbohydrate becomes more available, like the protein will kind of scale back down. It's just I don't want to call it a consequence. It's a design for dieting, right? It's really hedging your bet, saturating the protein, because one, the goal is to protect as much lean muscle mass as possible when dieting. Carbohydrate is, like muscle protective, but then when there's, I don't want to say too much carbohydrate, but the more carbohydrate, the less fat you're going to be burning, because you have a fuel source there. So it just makes a lot of sense from my standpoint.
For sure. No, I agree. I've always just kind of felt that the extra carbs would provide me like more of the instant energy maybe that I want.
Oh, definitely.
So it's interesting. Like, do you know how long that process takes to convert excess protein into carbohydrate if it's needed to do so?
I don't have a time on you, and I don't know the The one circumstance that I do know it happens like really frequently in is the people who train fasted and do like,
Mm-hmm.
if like the people who go do CrossFit at 5 a.m. and don't eat anything and they're on that low carbohydrate diet, like you are literally catabolizing your lean muscle mass as a fuel
Yeah,
substrate for
yeah.
your CrossFit workouts. So that is like one scenario that I do know where it happens, kind of, I don't want to say like regularly, but you're setting yourself up for a perfect, scenario for that to happen. In people who are eating like consistently higher protein and stuff, I don't know the constraints of when that will happen.
Gotcha. Do you know whether there would still be as much cannibalizing of muscle tissue if said person was training fasted in the morning but ate a shit ton of carbohydrates the night before and then went to bed?
It would be less so. So yeah, when I have like clientele who train first thing in the morning for like schedules constraints or whatever, we load their final meal of the night as like a pre-workout meal.
That's what I figured. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, so with my diet, like I kind of went over what my macros are just then, about 200 protein, more or less kind of 300-ish on the carbs, and that depends on the day. And then usually I try to stay around 60 or 65 fat. Sometimes it goes up a little higher, a little lower. Um, but the reason that the carbohydrate number kind of changes is because I've kind of found a cool and sustainable model in a 3-day calorie cycling system for myself, where I essentially usually will have a rest day and then train 2 days and then have a rest day and then train 2 days. And that's kind of the structure that I usually use. So I've essentially been eating less or the least on my rest day, which has kind of come out to about 22 to 2300 calories most days. And then on my first training day, I up it 2 or 300 calories. And then on my second training day, I up that another 2 or 300 calories. And then I have another rest day where I drop it back down again. And that has actually worked really well. And I don't exactly know why. I theorize that it's because the second training day, I'm already carrying the fatigue from the first training day, and I need a little bit of extra recovery. So upping those calories on that second training day gives me just a little bit more boost at a time when I might need it. And then I kind of go into the rest day, and I really don't need anything. And I actually find myself not hungry on that day, which is fantastic because I prioritize things like doing work and being outside and staying busy, and I just kind of eat less. So that 3-day rotation has been phenomenal, and the main variable that I adjust in there is carbs. So on the day that's like 2300 calories, like a rest day, my carbs might be something like 200 to 225, and then on the next day they're like 250, 260, and then on the higher day they're like 300 to 320 or something like that. And then protein is usually pretty stable, plus or minus 200, like 185 to 215 range, and fat, like I said, is like 50 to 70 range. So that's pretty typical. And then as far as composition of food, so regardless of the day, my first consumption is going to be whey plus Gatorade. And I usually have 2 of those on a training day and only 1 of them on a non-training day. And then that would mean that on the non-training day, I have a slightly larger protein portion at my first meal, which is usually, noon or 1 or whatever. And then the first meal usually is some leftover meat with some rice and veggie fruit. I've been usually eat a lot more fruit, especially on training days, because the Gatorade is all dextrose, and they've actually done studies showing that the utilization of fructose with sucrose has an added benefit when you're trying to recover from training. So yep. I eat a lot of fruit with my Gatorade drink at that lunch meal on a training day, and then I eat a little bit less fruit on a non-training day, just kind of as a way to save some carbs there. So it's like a meat portion, a starch, like a rice usually, although I'm thinking about changing out to oatmeal because I feel like rice just, I love rice and it's amazing, but it doesn't really like fill me up. It kind of goes right through me. Yeah, so I have potatoes almost every night. So that was going to be like so I usually after lunch, lunch for me is, 1-ish, something like that. and then I'll usually get hungry again at like 3 or 4. So at that point, I'll have like a Quest bar and like maybe a string cheese or something like that. It kind of depends on what the kids are eating and what I decide to grab from their food. Um, but usually it's like a cheese of some sort and like a Quest bar or a Built bar or something like that. And then at night, it's always like a meat and a starch. And I really try to make that starch at night a potato. I've become a huge fan of the way I cook potatoes, and they actually almost taste kind of like French fries. Like they get kind of well done. So I slice them really thin and I put them in the oven on a baking sheet, spray them with a little olive oil spray, garlic, salt, pepper, and cook them for like 30 minutes on 400. And I don't even flip them or anything because the side that's on the pan basically just cooks and gets like kind of crispy. And literally I enjoy these. Like they're amazing. They actually, for whatever reason, I can convince myself in a diet that they're like French fries, and I know that of course they're not like French fries, but to me in that moment they're really really enjoyable. So I usually try to make those at least a few times a week. Maybe we'll have mashed potatoes or some sort of like other form of potato, but we do eat a lot of like sweet potatoes and russet potatoes in our house. And then usually that will be like a red meat at night for me. I usually have like a steak or some lean ground beef or something like that. And the lunch meal is usually like chicken, I think.
It's generally what I do as well.
Yeah. And then that will also have like fruit and or veggie, kind of depending on my day. I don't eat enough veggies. I eat a lot of fruit, but I don't eat enough veggies. So I'm looking on ways to kind of improve that. But I pretty much just eat the majority of my veggies raw. Like I'll grab raw carrots, I'll grab raw snap peas. I like cooked broccoli and cooked cauliflower. But I love the carrots and snap peas raw, so I just munch on those throughout the day a lot of times. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't. I guess I eat protein pancakes sometimes, and if I do that, it throws everything else off, and I have to make adjustments because they're kind of like the same similar macronutrient profile to like a perfect bar where they're just like high in fat, high in protein, and high in carb. They're just like
Dense.
everything.
Just dense.
So, yeah. So I love them. And when I'm not dieting, I can literally eat like 1,000 calories worth of them, and they're so amazing. But now it's like I have 4 of them, and I think it's like 200 and something calories. So when I do that, I do have to kind of make some sacrifices later in the day. But yeah, that's the food, man. Any questions on that?
No, the one thing that you brought up that I wanted to kind of go deeper on a little bit was eating a lot of fruit when you're dieting. And the thing that's really cool, and like dieting gets such like a kind of a bad rap because people bastardize it and just do it poorly, right? And don't get me wrong, there is negative consequences that will happen and stuff like that. But one thing that happens that I think is really cool with dieting is your palate will begin to change a little bit. So one of those things like fruit becomes so incredible tasting, especially like in the summer. It's like summertime now, which is often when people will diet. Strawberries are in season, they're ripe, and they taste like absolutely incredible. Like I cannot tell you, like when you get that right pack of strawberries and you're eating them, like it will give me this incredible amount of joy. And I'll tell like Jenny, I'm like, Jenny, these strawberries are absolutely fucking incredible. Like why can't they always taste like this? And like when you're not having like hyper palatable foods and stuff that are literally engineered, like companies have like engineers to, create these taste profiles and stuff. Like natural foods like fruit and stuff, like some maybe mango or like cantaloupe's another one, like they'll just taste absolutely incredible. And that's something I always like really look forward to as well.
Yeah. Summer fruit is the best fruit. Cherries are my all-time #1 favorite. If only we could find a way to take the pit out so that I wouldn't have to eat them slowly, then I could eat so many more cherries. But it's just such a battle to like deep hit each one in your mouth. I mean, God, they're just like a perfect diet food.
Yeah. I like them when you're like on a walk or something, because then you can just like kind of kick the pit or
like
something like that.
sunflower seeds or whatever.
Yeah. The fruit is cool.
Yeah, fruit's great. Apricots, peaches. I'm a huge fan of fruit, and I eat a lot of it, and I definitely don't think it needs to be like bastardized on a diet. So yeah, huge fan.
The only thing there is, I will kind of say, like when it comes to effective dieting, right? It's food selection is one of the best things. And certain fruits, like namely like bananas, they're just high in carbohydrate for the volume of food you can eat. I would say the worst offender is dates. Anytime I see dates in someone's food log,
Yep.
I'm like, hey dog.
Or like
Like,
dried fruit. Man, dried fruit
listen,
is like not even real fruit.
yeah. So it's just compare what you're looking at and see.
Yeah.
Berries are one of the best, bang for your buck carbohydrate to volume type fruits, like your strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. Some of them are even pretty high in fiber as well. So those are just going to help you eat more volume of food for fewer carbohydrate, which lets you eat a higher total volume of food on the day, increases your opportunity for increasing the nutrient density in your diet. And that is really like the name of the game of dieting effectively.
Totally. When we talk about fruits that are in season and not in season or whatever, so like right now, blackberries and raspberries are really not. I feel like every batch I get is just awful.
And they
And
go bad in 2 days.
they go literally. They sometimes they show up and they already have that white shit on them.
Yeah.
I'm so angered when that happens. It's just a fucking Whole Foods like Amazon delivery. Can't you just pick me like good fruit? Why you got to give me the shitty fruit all the time? But anyway, so it reminds me of a meme that I saw that was like, the problem with fruit is that sometimes you get one and it's amazing. Sometimes it's awful. Reese cups are bomb every time. I was like, it's very, very true.
It really is true. Yeah. It's there isn't as much variation in what you're going to get for sure.
Yeah. Should we do a question here?
Let's dig into it.
Do you want to do that one about number 5?
Let's do it. I think it will be really, really cool. And I alluded to some of it already, but let's dig into it. So the question is, what are the signs to call it quits on a cut? How far can you push? Do you want to take a stab at this one first? Do you want me to?
Go for it.
How far can you push? You'd be surprised how far you can push. Just, dig into like Google, the natural bodybuilding federations and see what those guys do. Follow some of them on Instagram if you really want to go down into that world. They will diet for like a year straight, if not longer, to get, peeled on stage. Is that healthy? Objectively, absolutely not. And that's just, we have to call it for what it is. What are the signs to call it quits on a diet? The first one, I would say, have you reached your goal? Has, getting leaner, are you in your area of diminishing returns, which I'm about to find myself in? I'm as lean as I really care to be. So getting any leaner, I'm in that point of diminishing returns. I don't get any more, subjective benefit, happiness, anything from that. So I'm pretty much kind of good here. I picked a date, and I'm going to stick with it. Other signs to call it quits. Has your quality of life decreased? Are you affecting your personal relationships? Is it affecting your work relationships? Another one that was really kind of cool to talk about, I saw on a story yesterday. Is it negatively impacting your sex life? Like once you get lean enough, your sex drive is going to go away. It has nothing to do with your relationship with your significant other or anything like that. It is a physiologic and hormonal response to the environment you provide in your body. Your sex drive will decrease. And that may become a problem for, people in their lives and things like that. So that is something to consider. Are your energy levels like suffering really, really badly? Are you becoming incredibly food focused? Are you like, is your stress level increasing at a rate that outpaces the subjective benefits that you get from, what you're doing? So there's a lot of these lifestyle aspects. To me, like a hard number I like to put is 10%. Like once unless you're getting on stage, like there's really no, in my opinion, benefit to being leaner than 10% body fat. Your hormone levels can still be pretty decent at 10% from like a natural endogenous production of testosterone and those sorts of things. You look fucking fantastic. And just to be clear here, 10% for males. For females, that would be approximately like 8 to 12% higher. So for females, maybe in that like 17 to like, 22%, depending. Everyone will distribute a little bit differently. That's and how far have you come, right? Have you lost already more than like 10 to 12% of your total body weight? That is a nice indicative factor as well. If people think they're gonna cut from like 30% body fat to like 10% body fat in one go, it's gonna be really really hard on you. It's best to take breaks and even return to maintenance and stuff like that in periods. So generally that 10 to 12% one you know one entire go at it. And it could take a while. You might be dieting for 6 or 7 months or something like that. And again, we, in my opinion, are nearing into that phase or area of it is not become healthy anymore unless you're starting at like a very, very high body fat percentage where just, reducing that body fat by a large degree does have improvements on your health markers. And that's just the last thing I will say there. Get blood work done, but do not get it at the end of a diet phase because you're just going to scare yourself because not everything, but things will not look very good, especially hormones.
Unless you're like me and you purposefully get it at the end of the dieting phase so you can compare to how it was at the beginning of the dieting phase.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power, baby. But so yeah, I think you pretty much smashed that. I think that every decision that you make like this has like an opportunity cost, or you have to weigh kind of the pros and cons, so to speak. And I guess it's when it's no longer providing you more benefit than it's causing you harm. So you kind of can make a pros and cons list in your head or on paper and figure out for you whether it's worth it to continue that process. Things like whether certain relationships in your life are being sacrificed. Like, I don't know if you have a family, but for me, when someone actually asked me a similar question to this, like they asked me on Instagram, is it worth it or something like that? And it is worth it as long as it's not too burdensome on me. And that comes down to that personal opportunity cost, but then also that it's not a burden on my family, that not that my dieting, the actual act of eating my food is a burden, because of course I'm going to have to be eating different foods, but more that my behavior isn't impacting them negatively in such a manner that it's obvious that I'm clearly depleted and I'm no longer able to be in control of the way that my stress is, how I outlet my stress on a daily basis. And so these are things that I'm very cognizant of, because when I went through the cut in 2015 to step on stage for Men's Physique, that was my top priority. I put it above Kim. Luckily, we didn't have kids at the time, but it was like everything was like, I have to go for my walk. I have to do my training. I have to eat my food. No, I can't go out with your friends because they're going to be drinking. Like, all of these things were very selfishly about me. Because this thing I was doing was so important, and now this thing that I'm doing is important, but it's not important enough to do that. So there comes a point where you just kind of have to assess your situation and determine if you're at that point or not, and then kind of the other checklist of items of whether it's worth it. So I think those are important things to keep in mind. And then I also have a practical idea of a way that maybe you can kind of test it on yourself and determine. So if you're at a point where you're like, ooh, I don't know if it's worth it anymore, why not put yourself into like a 2 to 4 week maintenance phase, or slightly above maintenance, where you kind of take yourself out of the diet and like kind of test the waters and see how you feel, see how you act, see if these kind of negative behaviors that you were experiencing on the diet suddenly are now diminishing. And then you kind of have this choice that you can make of wanting to just continue in the place that you are, where you're happy and content, or kind of jumping back into the diet now with this knowledge of kind of knowledge is power, of experiencing what it's like to be out of the diet. So just some additional thoughts there.
Yeah. The last thing I will add there, I like the thing you said with the practical kind of taking the 2-week break. However, a pattern that you want to avoid is dieting, taking a 2-week break, dieting, taking a 2-week break, like the perpetual never-ending diet, because it will eventually just, you will hit that point of diminishing returns, and even the complete opposite. I don't know what it's called, but things will get bad basically. Like hormones will only suffer more. Like you will eventually need to return to maintenance for a considerable period of time at the bare minimum. So just make sure
you're trying to do the Matador diet.
Yeah, but I mean, eventually, like let's say you want to lose like 30 pounds, and then you decide like, oh, I want to lose like 50 pounds now. I want to lose 70 pounds, and it's like been like 8, 9, 12, like 13 months. Like you're eventually going to get to a point where like you've dug the hole way too deep. You need to just take your wins and then come back at it again in like 4 to 6 months or something.
Yeah, that goes back to the diminishing of returns thing. Like it just reaches a point where you're just not getting anything for the effort that you're putting in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's good, dude. Do we want to do I think we're probably safe the rest of the questions because they're like training related, right?
Yeah, let's live this with like a mostly a diet episode. We haven't had like a purely kind of diet episode. So is there anything else you want to add on this one?
No, so we're going to do a training episode next week, and then is it the week after that we get to talk to the great Dr. Helms?
It is. It's going to be super cool.
Very nice. I'm excited about that.
On the topic of dieting, and I can't believe I didn't think of this in the beginning, when this episode launches, I will be in an open intake for my nutrition coaching. There will probably be, when this episode comes out, maybe 5 to 6 days left of applications opening. It is for my 22-week nutrition coaching training education program called the Metabolic Performance Protocol. It will be the final time that I take on new clients for the year of 2021. So after this one, I will not launch another one until January. So if that interests you, check out my Instagram. I have stories and highlights up on there. Check out the Straker Nutrition Co. website. I have tons of before and afters, testimonials, transformations, a lot of information about it. Then you can submit an application and set up a consult with me as we will go through, discuss your goals, and make sure that we're a good fit for each other. And like I said, if that interests you, reach out to me. And that is all I have for this episode. So with that, guys, thank you for listening as always. From Bryan and myself, have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week.